Aloha, everybody. Hi. Welcome to Inside Times.
Again? Yeah.
Again, here we are.
My
This
new
program is brought to you by Kids Hurt to Hawaii, and we are providing Inside Times as a way to educate and inform our families with information about grief and trauma. As we know, this is a difficult time that we've all been living our lives inside, and some of us more than others, as it seems, with the numbers going up. But we feel this information is important and hopefully will be helpful to you as you provide your children with support inside.
Mhm.
Today, our topic is truth.
Truth.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Truth is very important.
Yes. And I'm going to read some things because I didn't have time to write it down and print it out or create a PowerPoint, but I want to make sure I say this correctly in the way that I've written it on my notes. First of all, the obvious, the truth is a matter of fact.
Mhm.
It's a matter of fact. That's all it is. The truth is a matter of fact. The difficult part, I think, for many people is that it's a hard truth when somebody dies, or when parents are divorcing, or when a parent has left the home, or when children are in foster care,
Or adoption.
adopted, kinship care, or a child has been traumatized, or a family member has been traumatized through.
How that person died.
Or trauma through
Right.
Abuse, neglect, violence, domestic violence. There are just so many ways that the truth can be really, really hard.
Mhm.
It's hard to say, and it's especially hard to tell children. But it's important to know that children need the facts. Children need to know the truth. And let's talk about why. Because when the facts are that difficult for adults to say to children, then why would we do it? Why would we tell them?
Mhm.
And I think that's an important part to understand why children need to know the truth. Children deserve the truth about their lives. This is part of their story. If you don't tell them the facts, the truth about why one or both parents are missing, then that's part of their story that's like a little blank there, that's like an unknown. And imagine not knowing part of your own story. That's really hard for children. And I know, for me, growing up or living in foster care, no one ever talked to me.
Mhm.
No one ever told me why I was in foster care, what happened. I was 6, so I knew some of the information. I knew that there was violence in the home because my father was violent. And I knew that, why my mother left, because he threatened to kill her, But nobody, not a social worker, not a single person ever talked to me about what it meant to me, about what was going on in my life. The same with changing from one foster care location to another, because there were orphanages still open at that time. And they moved me from one to a different one, and then into foster homes, and then to a different foster home. And they didn't tell me that I was moving to a foster home. They just came and left with me and took me. They didn't tell me why I was moving. So this is, I think, still a problem in the foster care system because of the work that we've done with foster youth over the past 15, 20 years, is that, people are still not telling foster children why they're moving. They'll just come and pick them up, tell them, put your stuff in a plastic bag, and we're leaving. It's difficult. because it's hard to tell children, it's hard to see that response from them. But often children are very matter of fact about the facts in their lives. You know, they talk about the death, whether it's murder, suicide, or illness, or whatever cause. They talk about it in a very matter of fact way. And one of the important things about training our volunteers is that they learn to respond to those terrible truths that children share in a very matter of fact way. They learn to respond in a matter of fact way, because often, you know, adults want to go, oh, your dad died. That's really sad, you know, but that doesn't help. That's not how children need you to respond. Children need you to be just as matter of fact about the losses in their lives as they are, because these are matters of fact. These are truths. And it's not necessary to respond in a very emotional way. How about you? Did anybody ever talk to you about?
Well, when I was kids, I just didn't know much about, you know, my mother and, you know, how my mom died, and, you know, I didn't know I have a brother and sisters, and not the details.
So nobody
You
talked
know,
to you about
No,
these things.
so I just kind of, you know, I had a imagination
Right.
and get into the imagination, and
Right.
oh, my mom's gonna come back, and you know, I can see my brothers and sisters, and where? But I just have I just make up a story about, you know, in my fantasy world, you know, so.
Right, and children will do that. You know, if you don't tell them the truth, they will imagine things often far worse than the truth. Sometimes blaming themselves for what's happened because they don't know why what happened, you know, so they just think it's something they did or because of who they are, you know. So this is another important reason why it's, you know, valuable for children to know the truth.
Yeah, I didn't know the reason why I couldn't reunite with my father, you know, because my dad has a family, you know, stuff like that. You know, I mean, if I was told, I think children have ability to cope with it somehow, you know, if you know the truth.
Yeah.
Well.
In my 38 years of working with families, you know, with children, I've been asked the question, should I tell my child how their parent died or what happened? I've been asked that question hundreds and hundreds of times. And I learned from children very early that the answer to that question is, should I tell them, is yes. Absolutely tell them. Tell them, of course, at their developmental level. You don't want to give them gory details, but you want to give them the facts, you know, that this happened, you know, so, and use the words. A lot of times we say passed. If they died, you know, we say pass on. But if you know, children will confuse the facts, because if you say somebody has passed on, well, what do you do when you go from one grade to another? You pass.
Right.
So they'll think that if they pass their grade, they may never come back. And without other people knowing, they may sabotage graduating so they don't pass because they don't want to pass. So it's important to use the correct words like died, dead, murder, suicide. You know, a lot of times people will say the person killed themselves, but that's not correct.
Yeah.
The correct word is suicide.
So die from the suicide.
Right. And you don't say they committed suicide because it's not a choice. We often think of suicide as a choice because it's a behavior, but it's not a choice. And so it's important to use the correct words to say died by suicide or of suicide, because suicide is a terminal consequence of a brain disease. And the brain is the organ of thought, behavior, and feelings. And so when thoughts and behaviors and feelings are unsafe, it's because something's happening in the brain that is unsafe. We don't often understand that about suicide because there are hundreds of years of misinformation. So it's important to use the right words.
Right. You know, like it's a lot of stigma attached to it. So it's very difficult, the parents or family member tell children, especially, the suicide, die from suicide. And I hear a lot of, things like adoption, children who are adopted, it's very difficult to tell. Oh, I cannot, I don't want to tell them,
Right.
because children might get shocked and just like
Yeah,
so
some
much damage. And
exactly.
so I
Some
hear a
children
lot.
grow up their whole lives and not even knowing they were adopted until their parents die, and then they see the birth certificate and they
Right.
realize they were adopted. Or they, parents think, oh well, I can't tell them until they get to this age.
Yeah.
And then when they do tell them, that's a very vulnerable age, like adolescence,
Like a
for
teen, yeah.
example. Not a good time to be telling somebody that information. Here's a good time to do it, as soon as possible.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, it depends on, like you said, developmental,
Right.
stage.
The information that you give, should be developmentally appropriate.
You
So
might.
you don't want to use a lot of
Yeah.
big words.
Right.
You don't want to go into gory details, for example.
Yeah.
But you want to use the right words,
Right.
and you want to be honest and tell
Right.
them the facts. And,
Right.
often adults themselves will become very emotional when they share these truths with children. And then as a result of that, children become uncomfortable. So,
That's going to risk the relationship and trust.
well, let's talk about that, because that is another key fact about why it's important to tell children the truth, why they can handle the truth. Is that one of the things that we often talk about, and I probably haven't said it enough because it's so important, is safety. That one of the primary goals in grief and trauma work is to create a safe environment, is to have a safe place where children can process their inner experience. Important aspect of therapy is that safe relationship, that therapeutic relationship. The first thing you do is you develop trust. You develop trust because trust is how we feel safe. If we trust someone, then that gives us a sense of safety, that that person provides safety. So children rely on relationships of trust for feeling safe. And not telling the truth is a betrayal of that trust. And you don't want to risk it. You don't want to risk that trust, because it is a key component in your relationship. And once you break trust with a child, it's really hard. From what I've heard from children and what I've learned over the years, it's really hard to get it back. I mean, it can be as simple as waiting 3 days, because I've heard this from children. They didn't tell me for 3 days that my dad was missing and might have died. And then 3 days later, I find out. And here's the thing, as adults are talking to other people, they're talking to other adults, and they don't understand that children are listening. Children are picking up on the energy. Children are noticing there's something wrong. There's somebody missing. Children are aware that they're not being told. They're aware that there's some information that's important, but they're not being told. Other people are being told, but not them. So
they find out from other people, other sources.
Very often, that's what I've learned from children, is they do find out from other people. And that then breaks trust too, because then they realize, oh, this my dad or my mom, and you didn't tell me. So it's a really important point, and I have said it many, many, many times. Children deserve the truth. They can handle the truth. They need to know the truth. And it's just, I understand it's hard, and I used to tell families, you can come and I'll help you I will help you tell your child this terrible truth, you know, what happened to their parent. And so they'll come into my office and they'll sit down and I'll say, we're here because your mom or dad wants you to know the truth about what happened to their whoever died, right?
Well, I remember the story.
Yeah. And then I'll look at the parent and say, okay, go ahead. Because it's really the parent's job to give that information to the children.
Remember that when we did tete-a-tete, you know,
In
back in
Japan?
Tokyo,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's one. I mean, there are many, you know, children. Father died from suicide. Not many, some of them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then this child's father died from suicide by jumping off from the building.
Mm-hmm.
And then the mom, you know, couldn't tell her boy, you know, how his father died from, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but, you know, mom thinks it, so
He doesn't know.
he didn't know.
Mhm.
Yeah. Then, you know, so we discussed, you discussed with, you know, mom.
But
and
in
then
the
we are doing a group.
with him,
And then he was going, by watching his play, he just go climb up in a high place and a tree and jump off.
and
then he
while
just keep
jumping,
doing.
he says, remember he said,
I
I'm
forgot.
suiciding.
No,
I'm
I
suiciding."
forgot what he exactly said, but he was keep doing the same thing. Go up and high and jump. You know, and it goes down and it goes up again, climb up again, you know, like a jungle gym kind of things, and jump. So basically, I thought, oh, this kid know already how that father died.
Mhm.
You know, that's after the opening circle. You know, so we have a, you know, the free play.
Mhm.
So then,
They will show in their
right,
play
showing the
that
play.
they know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Or that
so-
they need to know. They'll
Mhm.
also show, because I've had
Right.
children be like, I'm not sure what happened,
Yeah.
but maybe this happened or
Mhm.
maybe that happened. You know, and they're trying to figure it
Right.
out, that they can't quite
Right.
understand based on the little bits they've heard here and there.
Right.
So they need to know.
Right.
They show that.
Right.
And they show that they probably already do know.
Right. So this kid, this boy,
Mhm.
you know, like we sit together. I was translating you. Then then we discuss about how father died, and jump off from the building. I think we helped mom to tell like her son that he said like okay, can I just go play? He just go up
Right,
and
because
play.
that's a matter of
Yeah.
fact. So now
So-
he's got the facts.
Mom was
Okay,
so worried about
the facts, yeah,
but
they-
now he got the right idea.
It's actually
Finally.
relieving. I've had
Mhm.
children's behavior dramatically change from clinging and being fearful to being calm and confident after they found out the truth about
Right.
how that person died or why somebody left. So it's children themselves who teach me that they need to know,
Mhm.
that they need to understand. But there's also a book about it. If you're interested in reading the book, too much light there. There we go.
Never Too Young.
Young to Know. This was a book written by Phyllis Silverman, who was one of the principal researchers on the children's bereavement study. And I think it was done when was that done? It was done in 1997.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, it's a long time ago. This book was published. When was this book published? Yeah, little time frame. This book 2000. So it took them a while to write it. So yes, so this book is based on what they learn from children themselves, and it is close to 250 pages talking about children needing to know, and how
The
important
facts.
it is for children to know
Mm-hmm.
the facts. This book, Helping Children Cope with Death, by the Dougie Center. It's a guidebook.
Are you gonna
Talk
write a
about
book?
it.
Are you gonna write
Find
about
that
a
in
book?
there for me.
You should write about a
I'm
book
working
about
on it.
how to tell the truth to the children.
Well, how is the parents do it, and be matter of fact, I wanted you to look that up, and so we can read to them. And remember, not telling the truth is a betrayal of trust, and you do not want to break trust with children because they depend on relationships of trust. Relationships of trust who feel safe. So this is key. Okay, so any questions today? Anybody joining us today? So feeling safe precedes a healthy grieving process. And grief is a healthy process, but it can become complicated by not knowing the truth, or it can be complicated by breaking that trust. So we don't want to lose that trust when it's so important to our children's safety, our children's sense of safety, our children's capacity to grieve in a healthy way. So grief is stressful, no doubt about it. It's a healthy process, but it's also a stressful process. And children need relationships of trust to feel safe, and feeling safe is going to support a healthy grief process. So it is being open to change and our willingness to integrate others into our wholeness, where no one is lost and we are not separate or separated from anyone. So change is loss. I just want to talk a little bit about what I just said. In my approach to grief, I talk about we got some wind and birds out there.
Right, yeah, so much wind.
The
It looks like
rain
raining
might
hard
be
over there.
coming.
Yeah,
We may have to close that window. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
it's all right.
And I don't know if that wind's too loud. Sorry, I apologize. It might be too loud for
We're looking
the
for it still.
camera. Really? You're still looking for it, huh?
No,
Okay, it's in there.
really?
Anyway, my approach to grief is really about integrating the other, because in part of our pain and our suffering from grief is that sense of separateness, is that that sense that they're gone, that they are no longer with us, they are no longer a part of our lives. But in fact, we never really lose anyone, because, you know why? Because if you love somebody, love is forever. You can't lose that love. That's the one. I had a child say, and I think of this so often that I'm probably going to do something more with it, because he was so profound. He said, when someone dies, all the love comes up to you. Meaning that when someone dies, all that is left is the love. And while you may have been angry or hurt or upset, then having that loss just takes all of that away, and all that you're left with is love. Now, granted, this isn't 100%, because there are some very complicated, difficult, painful relationships out there. We have a comment from Kitzer 2. When we own our truth with our children, it frees the relationship to be in existence with trust. There you go. I like that. So we assume that there's already a relationship of trust. So telling the truth maintains that. Not telling the truth can harm that, and that's something we don't want to do. What does the book say? I'll come back to my theory on
Well,
grief.
this is the how do I tell my children about death.
Mhm.
You know, the children and teens have told us at the Degi Center that they want to be informed of death quickly, honestly, and completely, face to face. They want their questions answered truthfully with the best information about adult has. If you don't have all of the information they ask, simply tell them you don't know, but that when you do, you will let them know. You know, but
There you go. That's good.
Don't lie, sugarcoat with truth, tell half truths, or provide a partial explanation. When adults withhold information about questions children ask, they teach children that adults will not be truthful with them. It may be difficult to answer their questions completely and truthfully because often information they ask is painful and difficult for you as well. But your children will hear rumor or the truth from the other children or adult, and it is important that they hear honestly from you in order to be able to trust you and what you tell them.
Thank you. Okay, that's good. Thank you. So this is from the Dougie Center's guidebook,
Yeah, I gotta
Helping
read this
Children
again.
Cope with
Yeah.
Death. There you go.
Yeah, I gotta read this
Yeah.
again.
Mhm.
Keep it. Let me give me. I'm gonna read it tonight, later.
Okay. So, yes, it's that Dougie Center is the National Center for Grieving Children and Families.
You are training director for
We're
7 years,
yeah.
and I was a volunteer trained by Cynthia, and training.
And our work there, my work,
Yeah.
In hospice was always about keeping the
Right.
children informed,
Mhm.
letting them know what's
Include.
going on, include them in what's happening, include them in that discovery of information. It's important for children to know, because when we are developing ourselves this goes right on through the lifespan, but as children, when you're growing and developing, you're going through a lot of changes. I mean, it's like children are dramatically changing very quickly over time, just in terms of their body growth and their cognitive understanding. And so often their understanding of death or divorce is going to change over time, and they may need those explanations repeated again and again,
Especially language.
because they're trying to integrate the information. Integrate means to bring it into your self-perception, bring it into how you understand yourself and the world around you. So integration is, I believe, a big function of the grief process, because in order for us to maintain a relationship with people who are gone, and people may die or go away, but relationships are forever.
Right.
And so it's how those relationships are maintained or continued that becomes important, especially if it's a parent or sibling that the child is lost through death or separation. Then that relationship still continues. If we act like it doesn't, by not saying anything, not mentioning or bringing up the name, then we do harm to the child. So it's important to be honest. They know, some part of them knows, because it's part of who they are in their wholeness, but we just haven't given them the facts. So it's important to give the facts. So integrating information into our wholeness. So then when somebody is missing or lost, then that role that they played in our life, that quality that they held, that we saw in them, okay, because we see different qualities in people. We don't see the same thing in everyone. We see something different, and what we see in others are what we ourselves are needing to develop. Okay, so we choose people in order to expand our wholeness, our sense of ourselves. Our wholeness is pre-verbal, if you will. Our wholeness is everything we are or were or are meant to be, every potential within us. And so our life experiences and the people we bring into our lives are used to develop that wholeness, to bring it into being, to bring it through our being, so that we can live our truth. We can live who we really are.
My question.
Okay?
So especially for the little children
Mm-hmm.
who separated, for somebody's gone, or somebody died,
Mm-hmm.
before, like maybe 2 pre-verbal children.
Mm-hmm.
We have to tell them the truth. Otherwise, they start make up stories.
Right.
So that's why it's so important
Right.
for the adult, around that the young children. tell
Is that
the
a
truth.
question that sounded like a
No,
statement, but important
yeah, it is.
information?
So that's why it's important, because
So
I
what's your
didn't know
question?
because my mother
Should,
died.
even if they're
Yeah,
pre-verbal,
yeah.
should they be told? So like,
Is that
should
more important
infants
for the little?
know?
Yeah.
Or, and yes, they should know. It's,
Because their memories are based on other people tell.
right.
Right?
And they don't have memories because they were so young when that separation happened or that,
Right.
the loss happened, that they don't have their own memories. So they rely on other people to share their memories so that they have memories. But if you never talk about the person, then they don't get to have any memories.
Yeah.
Important to understand about young children too is that their grief is pre-verbal, which means they don't have words for it. They can't tell you about it, but it's still in their bodies. They still feel it inside because grief is in the body. It's not like out here somewhere. It's not in our heads. It's in our bodies. It's how we experience ourselves. And so they're feeling something inside. They don't know quite what it is. And yet they know there's something there. And so by giving them truths and language, then they slowly begin to develop words for what's going on in their body. In the meantime, they're going to play it out. They're going to play out what's in their bodies. They're going to express it through their play. And it's the same. So that's what I was getting to, integration. So integration is achieved by children through their play. So their imagination is, here it is, I said, an integration comes through the imagination. So for children, they're trying to figure it all out. They don't know what questions to ask. They don't know what's real or not real unless you're giving them that information and they're feeling enough trust in your relationship to ask those questions. And if they're not, then they're going to try to figure it out, and they'll do that through play, trying to find meaning through the very toys that they choose, the way their toys interact, just using that imagination. So like, going back to integration, when I was separated from my 5 siblings, one of the things that I did was to daily, multiple times, probably hundreds of times, repeat their names over and over and over, not out loud, because nobody wanted to hear it, so only inside. Or if I was by myself, I would say their names, and I had a little song that I would do, and so I wouldn't forget their names, and I wouldn't forget my siblings, and they were all younger than I was, except for my brother, but I still repeated his name too. So that was my way of integrating my siblings into myself at that time. I was separated from them, but that relationship was still there. So they became...
For you, because you're the oldest.
For me.
Second oldest.
I mean, for them too, but in different ways, because they were younger, like the youngest, who was a baby, fortunately, she was told that she was adopted, so she knew growing up. But there were parts of her that hadn't fully made sense to her until she met us as her siblings, then was able to see, oh, that's why I do it that way. That's why I do that. Or that's, so there, so many ways that we were similar. And, yes, there are a lot of differences. But when you're trying to figure yourself out, sometimes you're looking for things that are similar, things that connect you to you. And that's what children do in their play. They look for toys, they look for activities that will help them connect to who they are.
Yeah, I want to see my brother. I haven't met. Man.
So, in conclusion, we might be separated from somebody because of death or abandonment or from various reasons, incarceration.
Maybe coronavirus now.
Oh, so much of that right now. I mean, there's a lot of that right now, a lot of separation. And they
Children
can't
might not gonna
see.
understand. Why can I see my,
Right.
you know, my aunties and uncle?
Right.
You know, why I
Right.
cannot, you know, go to see my friends?
Why can't I
Yeah.
see my grandparent? Why
Yeah.
can't I hug my
Mhm.
grandparent? I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of separation. So
Yeah.
it's important. Sorry about that. There went the bus. Get it muted when the bus goes by. Anyway, we're back. The bus is gone.
Mhm.
And here's the key, is that in all honesty, we're never separate from anyone else. We might have physical distance, which we should have, 6 feet, right?
Right.
But we are not separate. We are still connected to them, and we are connected to them through who we are based on our relationship with them. And what have they taught us or shown us about ourselves or taught us about who they are that we now can be manifesting in our own lives or through our play. You know, how is it that we continue to be connected to others when they are not there? And that happens through integration, through finding those qualities in yourself, through recognizing that we are never, ever, ever separate. We are always connected in some form or fashion, and to bring out in ourselves what others have given us through their presence, through us knowing them. What have they given us? How have they helped us grow and develop? What have they shown us? And so that's a good way to start a conversation about a loss.
With
What
your
do you
children.
remember? What was that person like? You know, what did you learn from that person?
What do you remember about?
Yeah, and you know, and to be able to help children and ourselves remember those things so that we can then find it in ourselves to be like that. Maybe I can't see my grandmother and I need her wisdom. So find the wisdom in myself or in yourself so that your grandmother can be with you and guiding you because you know, because she's taught you already. So you know it in yourself. And so tonight today, I want to end our program with just reminding all of us that while we may have to physically distant and stay separate, physically separate from those that we love, we are never, ever separate. We are always connected to one another. And that connection comes through appreciating and honoring who they are. And somebody didn't silence his phone. We need to talk to him.
I did.
So-
Usually somebody didn't silence either.
Mine's silent.
But
it's
it makes
just
a noise.
vibrating. Sorry.
Okay.
So
Right.
yeah, so just finding in ourselves. And by the way, all of those calls that are coming in are important people
Right.
who we have integrated into ourselves, and you know are grateful to know. Very
Okay.
grateful
All right.
to know because their wisdom has made us wiser too.
Mm-hmm.
So remember that we're always connected. You're never ever alone. Thank you for joining us today for Inside Times.
See, how's my hair today? I finally cut my hair.
Looks pretty
3
daggone
months
good
later.
to me.
Yeah, so short.
Finally got it cut
Right.
safely,
Kind of
right?
scary,
They had
yeah. Just even going to
masks
the
and
haircut.
shields
That's
and-
kind of like I'm trying to not breathe. Or,
Yeah.
Is he wearing? So
So
masks
you
and PPE.
you got your hair cut and look at you now. You're 100%.
Nice looking. Still good looking. Be safe out there. Numbers growing, and the mainland is so much, but Hawaii still numbers are small, but still growing, and it's a community. You know,
Yeah.
not an outbreak, but just community. You know, like what transmissions happening.
So we really have to
So,
keep our distance and keep
yeah.
ourselves safe. And oh, Oh, look, Jenna's on. Hi, Jenna.
Yeah, kids are too. Just do the groups.
Jenna says we choose people to expand our wholeness. We choose
Right.
people in our lives to develop and expand our being
Mhm.
so we can live
Yeah, looks
more
good.
whole in
Thanks,
our
Jenna.
truth. Thank you. Oh, she just quoted me. I love the statement.
Yeah.
We're always growing and finding out our truth through experiences with
Mhm.
others. Yes, that's so
Right.
true.
Yeah, truth can sometimes hurt.
That
But,
connect back to how we perceive ourselves.
Mhm.
Thank you for quoting me, and thank you
Thank you
for
for comment about
saying
my.
it even
Yeah.
better. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Hey, aloha, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, Rising.